Hey Zwifters, and welcome to the Zwiftcast Espresso, the first in an occasional series of podcasts which will feature extended interviews with interesting contributors. Shorter versions of these pieces may have already appeared on the main Zwiftcast, but this is a chance to hear unedited conversations. The first is with D C Rainmaker, the doyen of sports tech bloggers. I visited Ray at his Paris base and we spent some time discussing his role. It's one that carries a lot of responsibility. I don't want to embarrass you, but it's just a simple statement of fact. You are hugely influential in the world of sports tech. Does that position ever cause you difficulties? Do you ever wrestle with the actual weight of influence that you have?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think, it's easy to speak honestly, and that's super easy for me. I just tell it like it is. What's tougher, I find, is having people understand the nuance of things, right? So to give you an example, I was filming a drone this weekend in the Alps, and things were working great. It's been great. It was all good and butterflies, happy, the whole bit. I came back last night and I was just shooting some simple photos of the gimbal camera. Like just literally was sitting on a table there. I turned it on, powered on, taking these photos, and it caught fire. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, this isn't good because the drone is now smoking. Sitting innocently on a table, what is causing this? And ironically, at the exact same moment, a person from the company happened to text me and said, "Hey, what's any problems? Everything good from this weekend?" And I'm kind of answering back. I'm like, actually,
your drone's on fire.
As we speak, we have smoke coming out of the drone. What's the problem here? And he's like, "What? No way!" And I put him on like what's up, live chat thing, and he's looking. He's like, "Well, that's not ideal." I'm like, "No." But that's an example where it's tough because this is a pre-production unit, and as the second he saw it, he goes, "Oh, I know exactly what that was." He said, "We forgot to turn off the motor overload safety for the gimbal, which we had off for dev purposes." And so you sit here and you balance, well, that's a dev feature. I know from an IT background, they turned off motor overloads on the gimbal. I know how sensitive gimbals are to motor overload, which is why every company has a safety valve or a safety check to do exactly what this was. And so you sit there and go, okay, yes, the silly easy headline would be drone catches on fire, but that's not what happened. What happened is I have a dev unit that they hand delivered to me in the Alps to test that was dev quality. It's not what a normal person uses, and that would normally be off. So I find those are the sort of scenarios that are really tough to balance. Of how do you write about that where people don't run away from a product because they don't understand it. Like it's filling those gaps are really tough. And because I know that how I write that one sentence could potentially mean the success or failure of our product.
Or tweet a picture of a smoking drone. I mean, that's exactly. Death to the company. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, and so I think, and I haven't quite, as of our talking, haven't published that post yet. As if this is going live, it'll be published. And the way I've kind of settled on is explaining there was a gimbal failure, but not really getting into the details of smoke, because I just know I'm not like one that likes to write sensational headlines, and at the end of the day, the gimbal's broken. That's it. If the gimbal's dead, I killed it, they know what's wrong, I explain what happened with the overload piece, but I think that's a fair compromise there, and not sinking a company for development of stuff, because it's really tough. I don't want companies to shy away from giving me development products so that I can provide valid feedback, what people want. I think that's the biggest thing that I like to do, is to tell the companies what the consumers actually want sometimes. And I think a lot of times there's a misalignment there, and to be able to say, no, the consumer feedback I'm hearing is people want X, not Y. And at this point in a product like in this drone, they have a month or so to start shipping, to be able to look at some of those features and say, this doesn't work right, or this is not what people want, tweak this, and maybe have that actually get into a product. And I think I'm luckily in a position to be able to, I don't want to say dictate that, but to be able to influence that more than another person commenting on the internet.
And I think people do understand that a lot of the time you do work with units in development, and part of your role, which is an incredibly valuable role actually, is to find problems before they get to market, or to give companies feedback. But then there's the other type of situation. I remember very clearly reading your review of the first iteration of the GoPro drone.
Yep.
and let's face it, GoPro got it wrong big time. I mean, that
in a bad way.
Yeah, I mean, that product was a disaster, a complete disaster, and that's what you said. Is it tough to write that kind of post for a company as big in this space as GoPro?
It is. I mean, for me, it's the line in the sand I usually like to draw is shipping. So to me, that's when a company starts shipping a product to a consumer, or when a company starts taking money on a product. To me, those are the two different shelves. So in the case of the drone, they're taking money for a Kickstarter campaign, and that's going to ship in late August. And so I'm all right with that because they've shown me a unit that is well beyond normal Kickstarter quality. I mean, it's basically a production ready unit that has a few minor firmware tweaks to go, and I'm good with that. GoPro, on the other hand, they shipped a unit that was not at all production ready, and there's a lot of things that point to that being the case in the month leading up to it. And then certainly when they shipped it, you could see that it's not ready for production. They weren't ready and competitive in any way, shape, or form. And I think there are other examples of that with a trainer recently that was shipped to me just before they started shipping, had some accuracy issues, and then by like the day after they started shipping, they had a build to me that fixed the accuracy issues. And so that's where you kind of sit there and balance. And I held off the post, a few days later just to be able to say, okay, can you get me the firmware update that fixes this? Yes or no? But once you start shipping, if you're shipping people something that isn't accurate anymore, then that's where I kind of say it is what it is. Like that's sort of the balance I try to play between dev and production. And I usually like to include data in my preview posts as well. So if I'm talking a dev unit, I'm talking preview. I never use the word review. I always use this is the first look. It's a hands-on. It's something like that. And anytime I'm including data in those preview posts, I think I have like 88 disclaimers per section that says, hey, things could get better, but they also can get worse. And that certainly happened where things aren't as good as they were previous.
Do you ever get angry emails from companies saying you just trashed our product?
Definitely. I've gotten a few, and I think there's an obvious pattern there. The ones that I get, I never get angry emails when I bash products from any of the mainstream companies, whether it's a GoPro or Garmin or Polar or Suunto or anyone. I think the companies that understand their products well generally agree with what I've said. They know it. I mean, it's not like they don't know these gaps are there. I've talked to some in the industry and they said, it's always a question of what gaps you'll find in our products, and not that whether you'll find them, it's how many of them you'll be able to find along the way. That scares us. So, the best companies out there are happy to take that feedback and happy to try to incorporate it in. I find the companies that don't take that feedback and get really upset and send me angry emails or threaten to sue me and things like that are the ones that just
suck. Poor product.
They more than just a poor product. I don't want to say they suck as individuals because that sounds mean, but they suck as a business. They don't understand how to run a business, and they're not business people. And I think it's tough. I'm not saying everyone can be an entrepreneur or everyone can run a business, but you have to understand that running a business is different than being a cyclist or a tech enthusiast. They're different things. And I think it's really tough for some people to understand. And so I think, I haven't got that many angry emails from companies in the grand scheme of things, just a handful. But in every single scenario, it was never from a company that I look up to, or that I'd say, oh, they make cool stuff, and maybe I was totally off base here. Which isn't to say we haven't had angry disagreements on phone calls with things like that from companies. I've had more than my fair share of pretty vibrant exchanges on conferences with companies disagreeing on something. But that's the case. And I always try to present their side of the story in the piece as well. So even if I'm strongly disagreeing with something on them, I'm going to say, here's why they think the way they think. And, then I explain why they're wrong, but at least I'm giving them the opportunity.
I mean, for somebody who's not a trained journalist, you've got quite a lot of kind of journalistic and editorial ethics and integrity to wrestle with on a daily basis, really.
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't have a journalism background. I just sort of figured it out. I guess I've gone along and see things that I don't like and try not to do those. I think in terms of ads and stuff like that, and not taking money from the same companies that you're reviewing. And to me, that just makes sense. I guess it's just obvious to me. Like if I'm taking money from X company and then I turn around and write a review on them, well, that's that's basically a paid advert. No matter how you try to couch that and say, you know, like in the US, you'll say, my opinion's my own, or all that kind of junk. Like at the end of the day, it's not. It's just, that's the reality there. So the fact that I don't take money from these companies and I go to pretty extreme lengths, whether it be media events or all that kind of stuff that I'm paying for. I want to travel. Just last night, I was talking with the company for an event I'm going to New York for later on this summer. And, you know, they had offered to pay for the travel and the hotel and all that kind of stuff. And I said, no, I'll cover my airfare and the travel and hotel. And the hotel they were staying at, the cheapest rate was $600 a night for this event. And I'm like, well, I found a place 200 meters away that's a fraction of that price. So I'm going to stay there. I'm sorry. I know they would have offered a hotel, and I'm like, I'm not even going to stay in a hotel on my dime because I'm not going to pay $600 a night. And they went up to like $2,000 a night for these rooms in this beautiful place out in New York somewhere. And to me, that's just... it sucks that I'm going to invest, you know, $1,500 or so between airfare and hotel and car and transit for this 2-day event in New York. But I think it's good for readers to know that at the end of that event, when I publish pieces from that I can say this product is good or it's bad, and not because someone's trying to influence me because they invited me to a swanky hotel that overlooks the beach and, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's because I think the product is great, or I think it sucks because it sucks.
And I think that integrity is why you are so widely read and widely admired and have such an influential place in the industry. It's underpins the success of the blog, I feel, and I'm sure anybody who reads it would agree with that. Brilliant, Ray. Really interesting, thought-provoking stuff, and fantastic to spend some time with you in the Pain Cave and get your thoughts one-to-one in some depth. Really appreciate the time you've given us. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's always great to chat, and look forward to chatting down the road.